Hello, my name is Jisho, and I'm reading Master Dōgen Shōbōgenzō, and we are on chapter 75, Jisho-Zanmai, Samadhi as experience of the self. Ji means self, Sho means to experience, and Zanmai means Samadhi, or the balanced state. So Jisho-Zanmai means Samadhi as the state of experience. In this chapter, Master Dōgen explains the meaning of Jisho-Zanmai, criticizing the wrong understanding of Master Dai Soko and his disciples. They understood Jisho-Zanmai as meaning an intellectual state referred to as enlightenment, a state that they made their utmost efforts to attain. Master Dōgen did not agree with this belief. In this chapter, he strongly criticizes Master Dai Soko and explains the true meaning of Jisho-Zanmai. What the Buddhas and the patriarchs have authentically transmitted from all the Buddhas and the 7 Buddhas is Samadhi as the state of experiencing the self. It is what is called sometimes to follow a good counselor, sometimes to follow the sutras. This state is just the eyes of the Buddhist patriarchs. For this reason, the eternal Buddha Sokai asks a monk, "Do you rely upon practice and experience or not?" The monk says, "It is not that there is no practice and experience, but to taint it is impossible." This conversation between the 6th master, Master Daikan Ino, and Master Nangaku Ijo is recorded in Shinji Shōbōgenzō Part 2, Number 1. So remember, untainted practice and experience is the Buddhist patriarchs themselves, and is the Buddhist patriarch Samadhi as a thunderclap, wind and rolling thunder. Just in the moment of following a good counselor, sometimes we see half of each other's face, sometimes we see half of each other's body, sometimes we see the whole of each other's face, and sometimes we see the whole of each other's body. There are instances of meeting in each other half of the self, and there are instances of meeting in each other half of the external world. We experience in each other the state in which the head of a god is covered with hair, and we experience in each other the state in which the face of a demon is topped with horns. We have the experience of following circumstances while going among alien types, and we go on changing while living among like beings. In these situations, we do not know how many thousand myriad times we throw away the body for the sake of Dharma. And we do not know for how many kotis of hundreds kalpas we seek Dharma for the sake of our own body. This is the vigorous activity of following a good counselor, and it is the actual condition of exploring the self and suiting the self. At the time of mutual realization, in the wink of an eye, this condition possesses a smiling face, and on the occasion of prostration to attainment of the marrow, it cuts off an arm. In sum, from the time before and after the 7 Buddhas to beyond the time of the 6th Patriarch, the good counselors who have met themselves are not 1 and not 2. And the good counselors who have met the external world are neither of the past nor of the present. In the moment of following the sutras, when we investigate the skin, flesh, bones and marrow of the self and get free of the skin, flesh, bones and marrow of the self, peach blossoms are seen protruding from the eyes themselves, and the sound of bamboo is heard thundering from the ears themselves. In general, when we follow and practice the sutras truly come forth. The meaning of the sutras is the whole universe in 10 directions, mountains, rivers and the earth, grass and trees, self and others. It is eating meals and putting on clothes, instantaneous movements and demeanours. When we pursue the truth following these texts, each of which is a sutra, countless thousand myriad volumes of totally unprecedented sutras manifest themselves in reality and exist before us. They have lines of characters of affirmation that are conspicuous as they are, and their verses of characters of negation are unmistakably clear. When, becoming able to meet them, we muster the body-mind to learn in practice, therein using up long eons or making use of long eons, the destination that is thorough understanding inevitably exists. When we let go of body and mind in order to learn in practice, therein gouging out eternity or soaring beyond eternity, we inevitably realize the virtue of receiving and retaining sutras. The Sanskrit texts of India, translated into Chinese books of Dharma, now number not even 5,000 fascicles. Among these, there are sutras of the 3 vehicles, the 5 vehicles, the 9 parts, and the 12 parts. And they are all sutras that we should follow and practice. Even if we intended to avoid following them, it would be impossible. Thus they have sometimes become the I and have sometimes become my marrow. They are horns on their head being right and a tail being right. Who's got horns and a tail? Head right, tail right, or head to tail rightness, the state that is right from beginning to end, I see. We receive this state from others and we impart this state to others. At the same time, it is just the lively springing out of eyes themselves, which gets free of self and others, and it is just the transmission of my marrow itself, which is liberated from self and others. Because eyes and my marrow are beyond self and beyond others, Buddhist patriarchs have authentically transmitted them from the past to the past, and Buddhist patriarchs pass them on from the present to the present. They are sutras as staffs and preach the length and preach the breadth, naturally breaking emptiness and breaking existence. Vertically preach and horizontally preach means to preach without restriction in any direction. There are sutras as fly whisks that cleanse snow and cleanse frost. There are 1 order and 2 orders of sutras as zazen. There are sutras as kazayas with 10 scrolls per volume. These are guarded and maintained by the Buddhist patriarchs. Following sutras like these, we perform practice and experience and attain the truth. Causing to exist sometimes God faces and human faces, and sometimes sun faces and moon faces, the effort of following the sutras is realized. At the same time, all instances of following good counselors and of following the sutras are just to follow the self. A sutra is naturally a sutra of the self, and a good counselor is naturally a good counselor of the self. To take up the 100 weeds is to take up the self. To take up the 10,000 trees is to take up the self. We learn in practice that the self is inevitably efforts like these. In this learning in practice, we get rid of the self, and we experience the self as exact accordance. Footnote means to experience the state which is exactly the same as the state of Gautama Buddha. Great. For this reason, in the great truth of the Buddhist patriarchs, there are concrete tools for experiencing the self and realizing the self. But if we are not Buddhist patriarchs as rightful successors, we do not receive their authentic transmission. There are concrete tools that have been received from rightful successor to rightful successor, but if we are other than the bones and marrow of the Buddhist patriarchs, we do not receive their authentic transmission. Because we learn in practice like this, during the transmission and reception to and from others, the transmission exists as "you have got my marrow" and "I transmit the right Dharma I treasury that I possess to Ma Kasyapya." Preaching is not necessarily connected with self and others. Preaching for others is just preaching for the self. It is listening and preaching in which self and self experience the same state. One ear is listening, and one ear is preaching. One tongue is preaching, and one tongue is listening. That's right. And so on for eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, for the sense organs, their consciousness, and their objects. Going further, there is experience and there is practice with one body and one mind. It is the ears themselves listening and preaching, and the tongue itself listening and preaching. Yesterday we were preaching to others, an exception to the rule, but today we are preaching to ourselves, an established rule. Footnote: Master Dōgen's variation of the Chinese expression, yesterday preaching an established rule, today preaching an exception to the rule. In this way, the faces of the sun line up one after another, and the faces of the moon line up one after another. To preach Dharma and to practice Dharma for the benefit of others is to hear Dharma, to clarify Dharma, and to experience Dharma in our whole life at each moment. Even in this present life, if we are sincere in preaching Dharma to others, our own attainment of Dharma is made easy. Or if we help and encourage other people to listen to Dharma, our own learning of Dharma receives good sustenance. We receive sustenance in our body, and we receive sustenance in our mind. If we hinder others in listening to Dharma, our own listening to Dharma is hindered. To preach Dharma and to listen to Dharma with our whole body at each moment, in our whole life at each moment, is to hear Dharma in every age, and is to listen again in the present age to the Dharma that was authentically transmitted to us in the past. We are born in Dharma and we die in Dharma, and so, having received the authentic transmission of the Dharma while in the whole universe in 10 directions, we listen to it in our whole life at each moment, and we practice it with our whole body at each moment. Because we can realize our whole life at each moment in Dharma and make our whole body at each moment into Dharma, we bring together both single molecules and the universal order and let them experience Dharma. That being so, having heard a word in the East, we should preach it to a person on coming to the West. This is to use oneself to make effort in listening and preaching as one act, and it is to practice and experience the Eastern self and the Western self as one self. In any event, we should be glad to, should hope to, and should resolve to bring the Buddha Dharma and the Patriarch's truth close to our own body-mind and to practice them. We should extend the practice from an hour to a day and from a year to a lifetime. We should let the Buddha Dharma play as our soul. This is called not passing any life in vain. Do not think, on the contrary, that because we are not yet clear, we should not preach for other people. If we expect clarification, we will not achieve it even in countless kalpas. Even if we have clarified human Buddhas, we should further clarify celestial Buddhas. Even if we have clarified the mind of mountains, we should further clarify the mind of waters. Even if we have clarified dharmas arisen from causes and conditions, we should further clarify dharmas that are beyond causes and conditions. Even if we have clarified the outer limits of a Buddhist patriarch, we should further clarify the ascendant state of a Buddhist patriarch. To intend to complete the clarification of these things in one generation and thereafter to act for the benefit of others is not diligent effort, is not to be a stout fellow, and is not learning and practice. In sum, As students of the truth of the Buddhist patriarchs, from the time we learn in practice one method or one standard, we let our will to teach others rise to pierce the heavens. We thereby get free of self and others. Going further, if we exhaustively explore the self, we will already have exhaustively explored the external world. And if we exhaustively explore the external world, we will already have exhaustively explored the self. Unless received from a master, this Buddhist standard cannot be realized in bodily experience, even by the innately intelligent. If the innately intelligent never meet a master, they do not know that which is beyond innate intelligence, and do not know that which is neither innate nor intelligence. Even if they are innately intelligent, they cannot thereby know the great truth of the Buddhist patriarchs. After they learn it, they can know it. To realize the truth in bodily experience and to realize the external world in bodily experience is the great truth of the Buddhist patriarchs. We should just utilize our own beginner's state of learning in practice in order to experience communion with the beginner's state of learning in practice of the external world. From the stage of the beginner onwards, to continue experiencing together both the self and the external world is to be in touch with the ultimate state of communion. As we work on the self, so we should promote the work of the external world. Footnote: by enjoying Zazen, for example, we make our circumstances vigorous. Okay, and he's about to go into the stuff about Zen Master Dai, so I'm going to pause there for the next talk. Thank you for listening. Do take care.